Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of Nerdstalgic with me, your host, Luke, the Ginger Bookworm. Hope you're doing well today. Hope you're doing fine. I want to get some thank yous out of the way first. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody who listened to the last two episodes, the backwards compatibility and Nintendo hates you and me. Um, Thank you completely for listening to them. Mostly, thank you to everybody who's listened to the Nintendo one, because I generally thought that nobody was either going to listen to it or I was going to get loads of hate for it, because there are a lot of Nintendo fanboys out there, which is completely fine because you have fandoms and everything. But when it comes to Nintendo, they really like to protect it. It's really sort of like you don't touch my stuff, go away. Like it's like Step Brothers. Do you touch my drum set? It's that sort of thing. Did you talk about Nintendo? They don't like it. So I'm glad that everybody listened to it, enjoyed it. I tried to be as fair as possible. Yes, I'm not the biggest fan of Nintendo, but I tried to be as honest as possible as to why I thought their practices are quite negative. And I've noticed since doing that post that more things have been coming out and more news articles and other people have been talking about it, and more just how bad Nintendo are and how really their practices are not gamer friendly at all. So I'm glad that that conversation started to be had. I'm not saying I started it, but I'm glad that conversation is finally starting to be had, and hopefully Nintendo sees said conversations and like, okay, maybe we should start thinking about changing our ways or do more things to be more gamer friendly. So thank you to everybody who listened to that one, as well as the backwards compatibility and the game preservation. Everybody who listened to that, thank you. Also, I know there are a lot of new listeners, so I want to say thank you to you folks for joining. If you're new and you're catching up, and I'm far ahead in like the 20th episode. Thank you for catching up. Thank you for being here. I know not many people do that. When I listen to podcasts, they tend to just keep rolling. They don't think about the past, but I do. I like to say, thank you to everybody who's listening now or listening in the future. If you're listening to this, thank you for catching up and listening to the older ones. It means a lot. So I just want to say thank you. So now the thank yous out of the way. Today's topic, today's main quest is, as you've seen from the title, is graphic novels. And my adventure into the world of graphic novels, of where I started, where I wanted to get into graphic novels, to where I am now, and then where I want to, go with graphic novels into the future. As with everything that I talk about, it's love, passion. One of the biggest tips I would give anybody to listening to this who has a podcast or wants to do a podcast, talk about what you love, not just what you know, but talk about what you love and what you're passionate about. And I've done that many times, and I figured one thing that I haven't really talked about, one thing I haven't really mentioned is comic books, and I haven't really talked about that sort of nerdy side of me. I've talked about books, I've talked about gaming and movies and stuff like that, but I've never really touched on comic books. So I figured today we will sit down and we'll have a discussion, a chat about my history with graphic novels and my journey through them. So hope you can join me. Hope you'll enjoy this. I don't know how long this will go on for, because if you've been listening for long enough now, you know I tend to waffle, but I always come back. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and let's move on to the main bulk of this, shall we? Introducing the interlog, the thingamajig, the music. So I'm going to start by telling a tale. I'm going to tell another story, and hopefully you'll find this one interesting. As if you're still listening, you probably found the other ones interesting as well. So you might like this one as well. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Um, but it's like I say, it's the story of how I got into graphic novels, how I went from comic books to graphic novels, where I am to now. So in the past, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there was me on my own, because there was nobody else. Probably not that far back. But a long time ago, when I was younger, I've always really been into sort of comic books and movies. I grew up with X-Men and the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and Blade. Yeah, I've always been grew up with these Marvel sort of characters, and you had a few DC as well. I saw the original Superman movies and Batman, and of course. And it was as I got a bit older that I realized they weren't just movie characters. These were genuinely like old-fashioned comic book characters, and I'd always wanted to explore them. I always wanted to really dig deep and read these comic books. As you know, obviously struggling to be able to read. One of the things that appealed to me by comic books was that yes, I might struggle to read, but the pictures well are done well enough and designed well enough and drawn well enough that you don't really need to be able to understand what they're saying fully to understand what's going on. Just the art is good enough to kind of get a gist of what's going on. And so, as a young child who struggles with reading, it was a very much sort of, well, I can go into this and I might not know greatly how to read, but I can still enjoy it, and I can still get into this world and into these characters. And then, eventually, as I get better on my reading, I can come back and kind of re-explore them again in a different light. One of the downsides, though, one of the biggest caveats of this was that even though I grew up in a very sort of nerdy, sort of geeky sort of family with my dad, he was into the more of the gaming, the movies, and the documentaries like Discovery Channel. When it comes to comic books, not so much. And I sort of tended to grow up to think that comic book shops, places where you go to get comics, wasn't an English thing. I tended to think that it wasn't. It was more just an American thing. Obviously, now as an adult, and I now know that's not true. You have places like Forbidden Planet, but when I was younger, there was nothing like that around me. So I didn't know of comics. The only place I knew you could get comic books, or kind of like comic books, shall I say anyway, was my local newsagents. And even they only really sold Futurama and The Simpsons. And I wasn't really allowed. It's not that I wasn't allowed them. It's just more just the fact of my parents was like, well, we will know, I'm not going to buy that. And I don't think it was out of cruelty. It was just out of the thing of like, I'm not wasting my money on that, knowing that you're not going to be able to read it, even though I try to explain them, know the pictures. So I kind of get where they're coming from, but at the same stage, parents. But I now as an adult, I understand what they meant behind it. But yeah, so I never really got to experience, the hardcore sort of comic books. It was more just the fact of, if I ever got the chance, it would be Futurama or The Simpsons, which I read a few when I was younger, and they're quite good. And I know that I've got a few friends who read the Simpsons comic books even now as adults, so I know they are good. I'm not hating on them. That's what I'm basically trying to explain. So I never got to experience them, and even all the way through my childhood and my teens, I never really got to really get into them. It wasn't till I think I was about 16, 17, and I remember like this is when I really got into reading. This is when when I finished school. I read all my books, and I was thinking, well, I want to start reading a few more graphic novels. So I asked my mom, and she got me one off Amazon, and I'll get on to which one it was in a minute. I'll leave that bit hanging so you stick around. Gotta be clever with it. Gotta make you stick around for the story to get all the good stuff first. So yeah, once I read that first one and was blown away. I was sort of transported into this world of like, oh well, I don't really need to read the comics. Why read the comics when I can just wait for the omnibus, when I can just wait for the volume, when I can just wait for the big book itself? So that's what I ended up doing, was like, oh, there's a new comic book series out. I'll wait till it runs its course, and then I will jump in when they release the big omnibus, when they release the big collection of it. Because the way comic books are done, it's once a month. It's not a bi-weekly thing. You've got to wait for them to be drawn, to be created, and then published. So it's kind of, for me, it's like, well, I want to know what happens next. I don't want to have to sit and wait a month for the next one. It's like waiting for a TV series, but the only difference is instead of once a week, it's once a month, and it's very taxing. Like, I want to know what happens now. I don't want to wait a month to figure out. Like, I might not be here next month. I don't want to have that much of a cliffhanger. But that's just how comic books are. So I don't judge them. That's the way they've always been. So that's just the way it is. But for me, it was like, no, I don't. You could say it was laziness. You could say not wanting to wait, not being being bothered to being actually sitting there being like, yeah, I'll wait a month. Like, no, I want to know what happens now. I want it now. So that's basically where it came from. It was like, well, I'll just get the graphic novels. Graphic novels are easier, simpler. It's a complete collection, and I get the full story. I get the whole arc. No matter how many issues, I get everything in one big tome of a book, and I can just rinse through it within a week. And that for me is enough. I prefer that. So that's pretty my introduction to it. It was the fact of like I wanted to read comic books, wasn't able to when I was younger. Finally, now I'm older, to get into comic books, realizing I'll have to wait by a bi-monthly system to get the next story, to get the next issue. But I figured, screw it, I'm going to get graphic novels. It's just easier, which it is easier. Now, I won't say that I don't read comic books. I do. I don't go out and buy them though. I get them digitally through. I think it's called. Oh, come on, it's by Amazon. I forgot the name. It's Comicology. Yeah, I buy them off Amazon every now and then, and I just read them through. I think the last one that I read was oh god, what was it now? I want to say Rick and Morty, which, by the way, if you haven't read the Rick and Morty comic books, I highly recommend you read the Rick and Morty comic books. Some of you guys might recognize the name, but it was a character named Gertrude, and she's stuck in a fairy tale land, and she goes on a quest, but the downside is that she never really be able to finish the quest. So she gets, even though she's stuck as a child, she gets older and older and gets more horrible, and it's very gory, but very fanciful, very sort of crazy, silly sort of thing. And I'm really blanking on the name, and I had the name there on my tongue ready for this moment, but now I've lost it. I know I say this every episode. I really should just write everything down, shouldn't I? I should just write everything down. Everything I know I'm going to say, and then I can just be like, "Pow, it's that," and not look stupid. But we have these lapses of memory loss. I think I think I'm slowly starting to lose it, if I'm being honest. But that's not the point. I'm going off topic. Back onto the comic books. I still buy them. I still get them. The last probably big series that I read, which wasn't really big, but I remember it was when Mass Effect Andromeda came out, and they brought out a comic book series to kind of as a prelude to explain why the initiative decided to leave the Milky Way. It's really interesting. It was only about 4 or 5 issues, but it's really interesting. But that was a bi-monthly thing. But that was the kind of thing was I'm currently playing Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't want to wait. I don't mind waiting. A bi-monthly thing. So I kind of want the story now. So I just ended up getting into it that way instead of having just to wait. But I am looking into reading some Doctor Who comic books, which I've been told are very crazy, very wacky, especially the Titan comic ones. They are very sort of insane story wise, so I'm looking forward to getting to them. Obviously I'm going to start with the Ninth Doctor and work my way up all the way up to Jodie and beyond, hopefully. But it's taken me a while on the book, so I don't know how long the comic books are going to take me. But I'm willing to get into it. But yeah, I do experience comic books here and then, but mostly and as pertains to this story and pertains to this topic, I am mostly a graphic novel guy. I just prefer them whenever I go to Waterstones or WH Smith's. It is always like my first protocol is to go to the graphic novel section and just to see if anything new or anything sort of takes my eye that I haven't read yet. And there's loads that I haven't read. I will go on that in a minute. But yeah, so this is me now. This is a catch up for you as where I am now. Graphic novel boy, big fan. I know some hardcore purists out there who will be like, "Well, no, you've got to read the comics. That's how you're meant to do it properly." I'm lazy. I just can't be bothered to wait. I'd rather let the whole series run and then get it all in one big go. But now you know. Now you know that I'm lazy when it comes to comic books. I'm not a hardcore. I'm not a true fan. I know. I get it. People, yeah, I can hear you shouting it already, and a lot of you probably switched off and was like, "He's not a purist. Burn him. Burn him. Shun the non-believer." Well, that's fine. But if you're still here, on to the next segment where I will go into the graphic novels that I own, that I've read, and then go into them a bit more detail, and what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and that sort of thing. So, on to the next Sega Rooney. Did I really just say Sega Rooney? Honestly? Oh, God. I'm losing it. I'm losing my mind. That's it. I'm going crazy. I finally got to the 7th episode and I'm losing it. I've lost all credibility. You guys should just leave me now and stop listening because I've honestly lost it. Sega Rooney. I don't even know where that came from. Anyway, moving on quickly before I really do lose it. The graphic novels that I've read and that I own. I've read a lot of graphic novels. What I would say is a lot of graphic novels. But I know I've got friends out there who have read many, many more than I have, who have got a bigger collection than me. But I feel like I've read a lot, and I'm still got loads more to read. Like I said, I'm still quite young, and there's still loads and loads of stories that I haven't experienced that I want to experience. So I've got a big stack next to me. Obviously, you can't see them. You've just got to imagine a big stack of graphic novels next to me. I'm going to go through them one by one and just like talk about what I think, what I feel, that sort of thing. So, first off, I've got Immortal Hulk Volume 1 and 2. I've read Immortal Hulk Volume 1, haven't read Volume 2 yet. Immortal Hulk is basically the story. It takes place after Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, and Bruce basically dies. He's dead. Yeah, spoilers, sorry. And that he comes back, and the whole idea of it is kind of like Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of like you can, or even like Jason Voorhees. You can kill him, you can chop his head off, you can cut him into little bits, you can burn him, drown him, whatever. He's always going to come back. You'll never not stop him. He is the oncoming storm. He is the ever-growing vessel of evil in terms of Jason Voorhees, where the Hulk is the oncoming storm, the huge vessel of power and strength and immortality, really. And it's a really heartwarming but scary story. It's very heartwarming because you get to see Bruce at his lowest, at the point of like Bruce himself wants to die. Like, I want to be gone. I'm done with life. I've hurt people. I've lost friends, family. I've got nobody. I'm literally on my own. I'm a danger to everybody, and more than likely, I'm a danger to myself. But I can't die because the big guy won't let me go. The big guy doesn't want to die, and it's that very sort of scary moment of just like, well, Bruce no longer has control. If the Hulk wants to come out, the Hulk will come out. And then it's kind of like where it used to be, where Bruce used to be there and he had control of the Hulk. It's a lot more like Inside John Malkovich, which is a very weird indie movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the basic premise of that movie is that they go through a door in a cupboard and somehow they're inside the brain of John Malkovich. Again, it's a very weird movie, but I highly recommend you go watch it. But you can't control what you see. They can just see through the eyes of John Malkovich, if that makes sense. That's the kind of idea with Hulk, where Bruce is there, but he's in a prison. He's locked. Like, once the Hulk takes over, he can just see what happens, but he can't do anything. The Hulk is just his own entity, He's kind of like in the trunk of the car, and he's just got a slit, but he can't get out, and he can just see through this slit as the Hulk is driving the vehicle. That's basically the premise of it. So it's very heartwarming, but it's also very terrifying as well, because this is a very ferocious Hulk. This is a very sort of like, he's still in terms of justice, like, people who have been wronged, but it's still very much like, he would come in and he would just like save the day, smash it through things up, but he would still be, not that much damage, not that much people hurt physically, more just kind of like a few broken bones. He's still going to hurt people, but it's not really like kill them. With this, it is more so just like, I'm going to punch you, and I'm going to punch my hand through your chest, and you're just going to be red paste. It's very scary. The artwork is very beautiful, and they're incredible. The storyline is just incredible. It's one of my. I'm a big fan of the Hulk, and I will mention the Hulk quite a few times. Out of all the graphic novels I have, it is majority of Hulk, because the Hulk is my favorite comic book hero character of all times. I just love the not just the nerd rage, but also just the fact of the story behind Bruce and the story behind Hulk, and that they're one and the same. and that they need each other, and without each other they are both nothing. So that, you know, it's very sort of like a dance sort of thing. It's beautiful, but also it's very sort of reckless and destructive and scary, powerful, but also, you know, very lovely at the same time. It's a very weird dynamic, but I'm a very big fan of the Hulk. I haven't read volume 2 because once I finished volume 1, I found out that I need to really understand volume 1, because it's not that I didn't understand it, but one of the things that I found is that to really get an idea of where Bruce is in volume 1, you need to read Planet Hulk and you need to read World War Hulk. I just jumped ahead. I just assumed that it was its own sort of contained story. So I got volume 2, but I'm not touching volume 2, even though it follows on from volume 1. I thought, you know what, I want to touch volume 2. I'll go back and I'll read the others, which I will get onto those in a minute. So I haven't read volume 2 yet, but I would recommend Immortal Hulk. The the series is made. I think I've got to get volume 3, which I think is came out this year, or it's coming out later this year. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I highly recommend Immortal Hulk if you just want a very sort of if Stephen King was to write a graphic novel with the Hulk, this would be the story. That's the best way I can explain it. You know, it's scary but heartfelt and so much character depth. It's the most character depth I've ever seen for the Hulk, and it's a very wonderful story. It's the artwork is beautiful as well. I wish this was on video so I could show you the artwork. It's just incredible. So the next one is Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. I've read Planet Hulk. Planet Hulk, it's just as fantastic, just as amazing. The premise of that one is that the Hulk is the Hulk. You know, he's dangerous. You know, he has no control. And the Illuminati, which is Reed Richards, Charles Xavier, Tony Stark, and Doctor Strange, they form the Illuminati, which is basically they control everything that goes on Earth. You know, the kind of that secret sort of society, which is another graphic novel I'd like to get around to one day. And actually, the Illuminati show up in the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness trailer. And there's a bit of a tidbit for you if you didn't know who those people were in the chairs. That was the Illuminati. Anyway, moving back. What I was saying. So the Illuminati basically the idea of like, okay, we'll send Bruce off. You know, he's too much of a danger to here to stay on Earth. We can't control him anymore, so we'll send him off in a spaceship to another planet where he can't hurt anybody. There's no intelligent life, but there's life on the planet, so that he can basically be at peace. Problem is, Hulk wakes up through transit, basically like, what you know, where am I? What the hell? What's going on? You know, freaks out, completely puts the ship off course, goes through a wormhole, crashes on Sakaar, and basically becomes a gladiator. Obviously, I don't want to ruin anything else because it's a very fantastical story. Yeah, it becomes a gladiator on this planet, and I'm trying to best how to explain it. It's a very anger-based story. You know, the Hulk, he's angry at Earth. He's angry that he's been left there. He's angry that he's in a place that he doesn't know. He's angry at Bruce because he blames Bruce for the reason why he's here, but he also blames himself. He doesn't want to sort of play by the rules of all the other gladiators, but he knows that he can't leave. So it's just the fact of this is, you know, you're all trying your hardest to fight, and I've got all this rage and anger. Screw it, I'm going to take it out on the biggest guy. So when they put him in the arena, he just goes ham, and all the others are really struggling, trying their best, and the Hulk just comes in and just one punches majority of things and just turns it into paste. And it's a very visceral, very anger-based story. And I'm not going to say any more about it because, you know, there are a lot of spoilers, which will then lead into World War Hulk, which I haven't read World War Hulk yet. It's on the list. It's probably one of the next ones I will read soon. But the basic premise of Hulk is that events occur in Planet Hulk where Hulk basically goes, well, you know, I'm going back to Earth and I'm going to basically let them know what they did was wrong. And I'm going to sort of react to some revenge. And there's not really much else I want to say about it, mainly because, you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, as well as I haven't read it much myself. I only know tidbits, but the tidbits I know are kind of spoilers because I learned about the story before I picked the graphic novel up. But I would recommend Planet Hulk. Definitely check Planet Hulk out, especially if you're a big fan into Hulk and you want to get around to reading like Immortal Hulk. Get Planet Hulk, read that, enjoy it, World War Hulk, and then sort of move on to. I think I've got to get World Breaker Hulk, which I'm not sure if World Breaker Hulk is part of World War Hulk. I've got to get around to reading it, and I'll let you guys know in a later episode, most likely if I remember. Um, Most likely won't do, but if I'm being honest. Um, but yeah, just work your way through them, enjoy them. Like the Hulk, I feel like Hulk is a very not just a misunderstood character by the people inside the Avengers and all that, but I feel like he's a very misunderstood character in the comic book universe as well. Like with fans, where a lot of people just see the Hulk as a brute, as a dum dum, just as a guy who just who gets angry, turns into like a very Jekyll and Hyde big monster, smashes things up, and then Bruce is the brains. But actually, what you find is that Hulk is also his own person, his own entity. Hulk is him. His Hulk is his own man, his own person, his own thing, his own beast, monster, whatever you want to call him. Um, and it's very interesting the different sort of moments where you have moments where the Hulk is just like, well, no, Banner. He has a lot of affection for Banner, but he also will say that Banner is very puny, Banner is weak, but also I know without him I wouldn't be here, so I owe him a lot, and I want to protect him, and he's very like Banner's very sad, Banner's very depressed, and I want to try to make him happy, but also I'm always angry, and I can't sort of help that. It's a very sort of lovely sort of moment and very touching. You will sympathise with the Hulk in ways that you never thought you'd ever sympathise with a character like the Hulk. But trust me, from reading the comics, you will very sympathise with him, and you will understand that the Hulk is actually a lot deeper character than on the surface. And that's what I love about comics as well, is that you don't really get that in the movies, you don't really get that in the TV shows. Whereas if you read comics or you read a book, for example, you get a deeper understanding of say characters. And I just think that's why I just think they're wonderful bits of material. And obviously because it's visual as well, because you've got the art, you can see, not just read it, but you can see it, and that kind of bolsters your emotional connection to them, in my opinion, anyway. So that's the Hulk. Definitely check them out. Next one, which is the first graphic novel I ever read, and to be honest, a lot of people have told me. But when I tell people this was the first one I ever read, a lot of people are shocked of because I really did jump in the deep end. This is the one that my mother got me, which was the first graphic novel I ever read in my life. Was The Watchmen. Yeah, let us sink in. The first graphic novel I touched, the first graphic novel that I decide to read, is one of the biggest and most complex and deep sort of stories, not just in graphic novels, but stories ever told in written form, was Watchmen. I remember watching the movie when it came out, being a huge fan of it. I remember watching the extended version and just enjoying the hell out of that. Zack Snyder did a fantastic job with the movie and with the characters. The Chameleon is one of my favourite comic book characters ever. I really, really like the Chameleon. The idea of that once you realise how much of a joke life is, the easier it becomes. I'm butchering that quote. I know I am. I know I've said it wrong. No, I'm not even going to try to remember it because I'm gonna spend ages just trying to remember what it said specifically. But it's a very beautiful quote. It's very sort of quote. It's very quote I've taken to heart. Once you realize how much a joke everything is, you'll realize how right the comedian was. How being the comedian makes sense. I think that's right. Anyway, the point is, it's a very big and beefy, complex sort of story. A lot of different sort of story arcs, a lot of deep messages, and that was the first one I jumped in. And I'll be honest, it took me forever to get to finish it because it is a very big boy. It's a very very chunky monkey. But I enjoyed the hell out of it. Like not just having the I knew the story because of the movie, but also the fact of going in it fresh and seeing things that weren't obviously in the film. Because even though the film was huge, especially the extended version was extremely long, you have to imagine when it comes to a book, not just a comic book, but when it comes to a book in general, one page is 1 minute of screen time. So if you've got the average length of a book is about 300 and something pages. That's 300. Say that's 326 minutes long. You've got ones that are like you've got a Game of Thrones, for example, and those books are upwards of 500 to 1,000 pages. That's 500 minutes to 1,000 minutes. It's a lot of hours, so a lot of those big ones, you end up doing on a TV show because you can get a lot more done in a TV show than you can. So when it comes to movies, you've got to condense it. You've got to like take the main plot points, the main characters, and then you've just got to trim off the fat and take away the rest. That's why, like with the Harry Potter books, for example, the Harry Potter books, the first one, the book one, book two, if you read those, they are basically by and by exactly the same as the movies because they're very short books. You can fit them in within an hour to 2 hours. But when you start getting up to like Prison of Azkaban and the Goblet of Fire and the Order of the Phoenix, once you start following those, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and more chunkier. That you can't fill them in, and that's why they end up having to do a 2 parts for the last book, the last movie, because you couldn't do it all in one film. You wouldn't be able to do it justice. So it was nice to go back to The Watchmen to see things that I missed, to see things that I didn't catch the first time round. It was very insightful, and I still quite enjoyed it. And it's still one of the first graphic novels that whenever people ask me, "Oh, what shall I read next?" Like, have you read The Watchmen? And majority of people haven't. It's one of those sort of books that are up there with like 1984, a lot of George Orwell sort of stories, where you ask people, "Oh, have you read this book?" And immediately people just go, "Yeah, I have." Majority of people haven't read them. And Watchmen is one of those series where you ask people, have you read it? And there are people who have it. I'm not saying people haven't read it. It's just more the fact of there is more people that say they have and who haven't than who actually have. And, so whenever I ask people, have they read The Watchmen? It's one of the things that I always recommend for people to go. It's like I said, if you get over the comic books part of it, if you get over the superhero part of it, even though that's kind of a main part of the story, if you get over the superhero part of the story, it is very deep. It's a very human sort of story. The very sort of if superheroes was to exist in real life, what would be the stresses? What would be the issues that they go through? The mental health issues, the issues of being judged for your sexuality, the issues of being sexualized and how you deal with that. The issues of nobody sort of takes you seriously, and it was like, oh yeah, you were super when you were younger, but you were just a guy in tights. It was very much the human mental struggles, the alcoholism, the drug abuse, the nobody cares about who you once were once you take the mask off. Once you have the mask on, nobody gives a shit. But as soon as you take it off, nobody cares. And how you deal with that, how you deal with not having the fame when nobody cares about you. Like I said, it's a very human story. And then if you add on the superhero stuff on top of it, it's very sort of very grand and prestigious. But then it's like, well, I've taken the mask off, and now the comedian, I'm starting to see what the comedian was saying. I'm starting to see what uh, Silk Spectre, the stuff that she went through. I'm starting to understand these characters a lot better. Dr. Manhattan, I'm starting to understand that once he went from being human to what he is now, the ideas of how he sees humanity and what his views are and how we act and how we behave, are very spot on, are very right. Now that he's no longer human, he is something else. He can now take a step back and to look, instead of looking for rose-tinted glasses, he can see the whole scope, the whole field of view of humanity, and get a better, clearer understanding of okay, there are good about humanity, but there are mainly a lot of bad things, especially around the 60s when this book takes place. There's a lot of bad things that go on in the world, and he's just seeing humanity for who they are, what they truly are. There are kind people, but there are more bad people in the world at that moment in time. So it's a very deep story, very beautiful story. So it is one I highly recommend. It's a very big one. It's a very chunky boy. There's a lot of characters, but generally it's one to delve in and just to immerse yourself into the world. And if it's so well that you could take away the art and just leave the words, and it would be a very fantastic book on its own. Obviously, but one of the upsides is it's not just a book. It's a book with pictures, and it's very beautiful. So that's Watchmen. I check it out. Next one is Civil War. I haven't read Civil War Part 2 yet with Captain Marvel, but I've read Civil War. I got it before the movie Civil War, not realizing. Well, I had a feeling and I had an inkling that because the thing that the MCU, that Kevin Feige, they don't follow the comic books to a T. What they tend to do is they'll take from comic book storylines and either rework them somehow or change things here and there, but just kind of take the bits that work. So they never do the storylines exactly, but they tend to try to follow them as much as possible. And Civil War, they kind of do a bit with the movies. Obviously, it's a bit different with Bucky and all that. But I ended up reading Civil War, kind of hoping that they would follow it, trying to get a better gist. And in fairness, I did get a better idea, a better gist. The story in Civil War is a bit different, though. The story in Civil War is that a catastrophe happens, something happens, and superheroes are got to be held accountable. Obviously, Tony Stark is on the side of, yeah, we should, out all superheroes. All superheroes should sign the accord, sign the agreement, and basically say who they are, their identity, that sort of thing. And Spider-Man comes out, tells the world he's Peter Parker. A few other superheroes come out, sort of tell them who they are. It's a very powerful, very good story. Highly recommend. I haven't read it in a long time. But it's very deep. You get the Punisher, it comes into it, and then it's one of them stories that it's very it's very much of like, what if you use a superhero and you've told everybody who your identity is. Kind of like what you see in the new Spider-Man movie, where everybody finds out who Peter Parker really is. He can't have a life. He can't see his friends, family, and that sort of thing, because now everybody is blaming him for all the bad things that he did. They remember the good things, but they remember the bad things more. So it's never just, oh yeah, you saved the world. Oh yeah, but you killed this guy, or you beat that guy up, or that guy, X, Y, and Z. And it's very much like, oh, sort of thing. So Peter struggles with that, and a lot of other series with that, and it culminates to a huge war, and it's a very sort of deep and powerful sort of story. I haven't read Civil War Part 2, but it's on the list to check out hopefully soon. But yes, I recommend Civil War. Definitely check into it and check it out. Sorry about that. I had to split it into two parts. One of the things that I found with recording on this app, I don't know why, but for some unknown reason, when I do in segments, it works. It doesn't happen. But when I do one long segment, for some reason that buzzing noise comes back, and I've checked my room for all kind of things that it could be. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I don't know if it's the microphone or it's something else or it's the app in general. When I do one long big segment, every now for some reason around about the 20 to 25 minute mark, a buzzing sound starts to appear. I have no idea why it does it, so I had to cut it part one, and we do part two here. So that's why the interlude came up, just in case you were wondering. So anyway, so we talked about Civil War. So the next one was X-Men Year One. I got this in a loot crate. It wasn't one that I wanted, but I thought when I got it, I thought, oh, X-Men Year One, the beginnings of the X-Men. So it was like Jean, Cyclops, Beast, and I'm sure there was one other character. I want to say Nightcrawler, but I don't think it was Nightcrawler. No, it was Iceman. I can't remember his name. I forgot his name. But I got it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is cool. I like another graphic novel to the set. Year One. There's a collection of Year One sort of graphic novels. I read it. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. The art was great, and I just wasn't a fan. So it was one of those quick sort of one and done, like, oh, I've read it, move on now sort of thing. There's not really much I can say about it. Like, it's a very confusing. The way it's structured is very confusing. One of the reasons why I didn't like it was you have the parts where it's like, oh, Year One, this is where the characters are being found, this is where they're training, and this is where they're sort of learning to become the X-Men. And then it will switch to modern day X-Men, where they are in the future, where they are in the present, and then it keeps. Then they'll have an argument. They'll be like, "Oh, you remember when we had this fight with so and so, and this person was and that person was here?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, I do, but you're still a dick." And it's just, then it does a flashback, and then you're back to that back time when they were fighting, and that's basically what it is. It's a very much like, oh, we're trapped. Remember this time? He's like, member berries. Basically, it's all member berries. You remember? I remember. You remember? And it flashes back, and I'm like, just tell me year one story. Like, I don't sit there and read Batman Year Zero and then have flashbacks. No, it's the full story of Batman's first year as a superhero. You know what I mean? Like, there's no wishy-washy back and forth. It's just one complete story. And that's what I was expecting with this, was just one complete story of their first year as X-Men. And in a way it is, but it's also mixed in with the modern day stuff of them looking back and seeing where they began. And I get why they did it, but I didn't like it. And that's what put me off the story, and that's what made it so boring. Was like, okay, I just want to get it over and done with now. So there's that one. Next one is, as I mentioned, my Batman collection. I've got a lot of Batman graphic novels. I've only read I've only read two of them because there's that many. The only ones I've read is Batman Zero Year, Part 1, Part 2. I'm currently in the midst of collecting this whole sort of collection. That it was like a magazine collection here in the UK that you could get, the Batman Legends, and it was like loads of graphic novels that all just had the different stories of Batman, very sort of iconic, popular stories. So we've got the Dark Knight, Joker, Detective, Case, uh, Private Casebook, R.I.P., Death in the Family, Batman Reborn. Oh god, there's loads. Like, sorry if there's an echo. I'm currently looking inside my cupboard space. I have to crane my head all the way in. The Halloween Midnight. Oh god, there's loads. I've got generally loads, and that's not even the full collection. I've still got loads and loads more to collect, because I used to collect them when the series was out that they were doing here in the UK. One of the downsides is that the event they said, when, obviously I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. Sorry. When you first sort of apply for them, as the deal is, your first one's cheaper, and then the second ones are a regular stated price. I was like, fine, that's not a bad price to pay once a month. It's okay. I don't mind paying it. But it just felt with every single issue, the price was going up, and I thought, is the price going up because I'm gaining something else? Am I gaining some more? Like a freebie or collectible or something like that. Well, no, I'm just gaining the graphic novel, the book itself. And I'm like, why is the price keep going up? And I got in touch with them, and they were like, oh, well, due to sort of not many people subscribing to it, and because of inflation and all this, we've had to bump up the price, so it's easier for us. And I'm like, well, that's not fair. You advertise this price, but now you're bumping it up because you found out that the series is not as popular as you were hoping. No wonder not people are not buying it, because you're charging extra for it. I'm surprised people are not sort of cancelling. In the end, they were like, well, there's not much we can do. This is just, again, it wasn't the person's fault. They're just kind of they're like the PR, they're the people that have to take the brunt of it, whereas the people who really sort of make these plans don't get any of it. So I didn't want to have a go at them. I just wanted them to know that it doesn't seem very much fair. Again, there's not much they could do about it, but it's just the way it is. So I ended up sort of cancelling the subscription, so I don't have every single book in the series. I'm having to go on eBay and hunt each one down. The downside of doing that is because now it's on eBay, it's like the Wild West, and people can charge whatever they want. And like, I'm currently looking for Batman Year One. I can get Batman Year One for cheap, because it's been out for a very, very long time. It's not a graphic novel that's very much expensive. But the reason I want this specific one is because if you put all the graphic novels in order on a shelf, they make a picture on the spines, are little sort of crop outs of pictures, and it makes the Batman through the ages. So this is why I want this specific one, because it will fill in that space, and then I can sort of make my way through them. And this is why I've only read two, is because I want to read each one as like chronologically. I don't want to just read random, even though they're not chronological order. A lot of the stories don't tie in with each other. I just want to go through the history of sort of Zero Batman to Batman near to the end. I want to go for that whole sort of nerdy journey through Batman. So I'm currently on the hunt for Batman Year One, this edition. The cheapest I've found is like 17 quid, Part of me would pay it, but part of me is like, 17 quid for that. So I'm kind of hoping that I can get lucky if I go down to a charity shop or go to a car boot when the summer's nice and I find somebody who is getting rid of it who doesn't realise what it's worth and will give it me for 50p or for a pound, or like I'll even for a fiver, something that's really under 17 quid, anything under that is a bargain really, but as low as possible. But yeah, so that's my little rant about that. That's why I haven't gotten all of them, and that's why I've only read two. But I've got loads so far. I've got quite a few that I've collected. I've just got to make my way through them. Don't know how long it will take me to get through them all because there's still loads I haven't got, and some of them are very and some of them vary in price. Some of them are so common that they're cheap as chips. Some of them are rare because again, not many people stayed on with the subscription. So those people that have them want to get rid of them because they're sort of a rarity now. That there are people out there who are like, oh yeah, oh you can buy it for £25, 35. Oh, you really do want it? 50. It's like, oh no, fuck you. I ain't doing that. I ain't paying your prices. Um, so yeah, that's with the Gears. It's with the no, that's with the Batman ones. That's why there's not many of them. But I will get around to them eventually. I promise. Next is the Gears of War Omnibus, which I've only got volume 1. There is volume 1 and 2. I've only got the first volume. The first volume follows on during the events of Gears of War 2, but a bit before Gears of War 2 at the beginning. Because the Omnibus contains selections of stories. So one story will focus on Delta, then the other story will focus on maybe some side characters. There was one short sort of comic book sort of series that it focused on, which was focused on Ty and Ty's time before he met the Cog, when he became a Cog soldier, and then when he was taken by the Locust and tortured, and you kind of get a better understanding as to why Ty basically blew his brains out when they found him, because he was gone. And again, it's very sad and it's very sort of heartfelt, especially having not getting to see much of Ty in the games, but knowing instantly he was a badass. And obviously, from reading the books as well, you get to see more of Ty, and then having a bit more with Ty in the comics. It's very nice, and then obviously it's very sad to kind of be like, that powerhouse, that tank, that guy that was so much full of resolve and so wise, could be driven to such madness that he was like, I'm just a husk. I am no longer me. I died a long time ago. My body is now just a sack of flesh. So he just blows his head off with a shotgun. It's very sad. So that's one of the stories in there. I've recently got around to finishing Volume 1. That's why I haven't got around to buying Volume 2. Volume 2 focuses on, I think, Ram and Scourge, his brother, which is the guy that you fight in Gears of War 2. So I look forward to getting Volume 2. I'm currently reading through Jacinto's Remnant, which I'm actually update on that one. I am about 50 pages from finishing it, so hopefully when I finish that, I'll be able to do a I'll do a side quest. Yeah, screw it. I wasn't going to do one, but I always say that, but I end up doing one anyway. But I'm going to do a side quest where I break down the book, because it is a very heavy book. It's a very humanized book. It's a very wonderful sort of story in a way that you wouldn't expect, especially if I'm not from Gears of War anyway. So yeah, that's the graphic novels that I've got. That's the ones that I own, that I've read, that I've enjoyed. And the next segment is going to be the graphic novels that I'm looking forward to getting in the future, that I'm looking to hopefully acquire. So on to the next segment, end of part 2. Oh god, sorry, I had to take a drink. One of the downsides of doing a podcast talking for ages is that you do get a very cotton mouth. You get a very dry mouth. So I always have to have water or some sort of liquid next to me just to kind of rinse my mouth out and just lubricate it, because I talk a lot and I get a very dry mouth very quickly. But you don't want to know that. That's not interesting. Why am I telling you that for? Why am I sharing it? That's oversharing. Sorry. Anyway, so graphic novels that I want to read. I've written a few down. There's not many, so don't worry. I'm not going to spend a good 30 minutes talking about all the different graphic novels in the world that I haven't read yet. So you can't don't panic. Um, so one of the ones that I want to read, and I want to read it as soon as possible. Um, but I don't think I will because how quick the film, like how soon this film is coming. I don't think I'll get round to it in time. Because the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness will have Wanda in it. Wanda's going to be a main character in the story, and I have a feeling from what I've seen from the trailers and obviously following on from WandaVision, I have a really big feeling that they're going to follow the House of M story. Um, the basic premise of House of M story, for those of you who don't know, even though I haven't read it, I know a lot about it because I'm a huge Marvel nerd. Leave me alone. The premise of the House of M is that the the Scarlet Witch has fallen out with basically the X-Men, and she goes this big sort of war, and in the end, she basically goes um, all gone, all mutants don't exist. She basically casts a spell that no mutants exist, and mutants go out of existence. And I feel like with the Multiverse of Madness movie, that they're going to touch on that at some point in the past that we didn't see, you know, Wanda basically says that she doesn't want any mutants, that she doesn't want any mutants left, you know, um, and that's why we don't have the mutants in the MCU is because Wanda got rid of them, but just leaving her. That's why, she's still quite mutant abilities. That's what I think they're going to do, or they might do, or even just the fact that they might follow the story where Wanda goes to another universe and sees like the X-Men universe, for example, and she goes to war with the X-Men. Maybe I don't know what they'll decide to do, but I generally think that we might get a scene where Wanda basically said in the past that no mutants, not realizing, maybe not realizing what she's done or what she's doing, and that she sorry, I got my dog on me. She keeps trying to get me for place. Like, no, I'm trying to do a podcast. Leave me alone. That she might not have realised, that she's got rid of all the mutants, and this could be a good way to bring in someone like Wolverine, Logan, for example, because the way Logan's powers are, and because the way Wolverine is, and the way his brain is, it's constantly healing, and he could be like we could bring Wolverine into the MCU. Probably not Hugh Jackman. Probably a way to bring in a brand new sort of different version of Wolverine from another universe. But you could bring in Wolverine and be like, oh, I remember what life was like before mutants. But all my mutant friends were wiped out because of what you did. But only I remember because of the way my sort of healing factor is, and I survived it. But all my other friends have gone now, and that could be a sort of contingency. That's what they could do. It's just an idea, and I just thought. But I want to read the House of M story, hopefully before. Most likely it won't, but it would be nice to read it before, just so I can get an idea of, the idea of the story better, and then kind of see if they when I do get around to watching Multiverse of Madness, that I can be like, okay, I see where they took this part out of the story. I can see where they took this part out of the graphic novel. Um, and that sort of thing. So that's my thought there. That's my idea. Um, Next one is Avengers versus X-Men. I would really like to get rid of that. I don't know this story. I don't know anything about it. All I know is that Avengers fight X-Men. It's been recommended to me by loads of people. So I want to check it out. I'll be honest, I like the X-Men, but I've never been big into reading the X-Men comics. It's the same with Fantastic Four. I like the Fantastic Four, but I've never really been interested in actually exploring their comic book stories. Mainly Pacific sort of stories. Like I'm a big fan of Wolverine and a fan of Logan. So I want to read Old Man Logan, which is another one that I want to read. It's on the list. So I've kind of jumped ahead a bit, but I want to read Old Man Logan. So I'm interested in that character. So I want to read that, but I've never been interested in the X-Men as a whole. But I do like the Avengers. So Avengers versus X-Men would be quite interesting, quite fascinating. Um, the next one is Infinity. Infinity is 2 volumes. and it follows the whole story of the Infinity Stones, the whole story of the Infinity Gauntlet, from Adam Warlock to Thanos, and that's all that. So yeah, I want to check out the Infinity um, story to kind of get the even though that we're no longer following the Infinity story in the MCU, it still has repercussions. It still has an aftershock, especially with the snap. So I want to kind of get the comic book sort of side of it. I want to see this comic book story version of it, um, how it's been used and affected throughout the comic books. So I've already looked at it a few times, and I know that there are sort of older stories on it, the older sort of old stories back in like the 70s and 80s of like the um, Infinity Gauntlet saga, as well as some of the new ones. So I really look forward to checking the Infinity Saga sort of books out. And finally, I put this one on my list because, well, I'm not really sure which one I should read first. Hopefully, anybody listening to this can help me. Um, I put down Secret Invasion. I want to read the Secret Invasion story. I already know the pretense of the story and what happened and as to why it started. But I'm not sure. Do I read Secret Invasion first and then do I read Secret Wars? Or do I read Secret Wars then Secret Invasion? I think it's Secret Invasion first, but I can't remember. I don't. I did remember, but when I was writing this, I was like, I can't remember which one's which. I believe it's Secret Invasion first, if I'm being honest. But if I'm wrong, please do correct me on Twitter. Um, but yeah, that's about it really. I've read a few. Like there are graphic novels that I've read that I haven't sort of mentioned. I've read uh, Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe. I've read every single one of those because there's a few times he's decided to go off and kill the um, Marvel Universe. I've read um, Dawn of the Living Deadpool, which is a very zombie sort of version of Deadpool story, which is very funny because the dead won't eat Deadpool because they say he tastes horrible. But they still eat him because he is the only recurring source of food. Because obviously he regenerates, so they can cut him up and he'll regenerate and eat him, even though he tastes horrible. It's the only food we've got. And it's a very sort of interesting, funny story. Um, I've read all. I want to say all, but I know there are newer ones out now. But I've read all the recent up to date versions of Rick and Morty. Like I said at the beginning, I highly recommend you sit and you read the Rick and Morty um, graphic novels. They are fantastic, and especially while you're waiting for the TV show, the each comic book is their own sort of mini TV show adventure. They're all fantastic, and they all sort of what you'll find is as you read them, you'll notice characters will start popping up again, or start seeing characters in the background, and then you'll get to a point where you'll get to a storyline where one guy was sort of in the background doing his own thing, um, and he got blown up. He lost his family, he lost his kids, and then started to stalk Rick throughout the universe. And then he pounces and basically tries to take him down and tries to kill him or tries to enact revenge or steals Morty. And then you go back on the other comics and you look in the backgrounds and not you won't see them every time, but you might see them in the background and be like, oh look, there he is, and sort of thing. And or you find timelines that will pop up and they all sort of coincide. It's very, very interesting. They've got sidelines as well, where they've got like side stories that focus on the Vindicators, focuses on Sleepy Gary, on Noob. There's Mr. Poopy Butthole has his own story where, like in Poopy Butthole's universe world that he lives, he is a superhero and he's a superstar and he's famous. That's why he doesn't like being there. He likes to be in our world because in our world he's just a Mr. Poopy Butthole, a random sort of normal person. Again, loads of different sort of weird stories. There's one where the mainline graphic novel, the mainline series ended, and it ends with Rick and Morty going to hell, and then that started its own sort of Rick and Morty go to hell series, mini series, which them fighting their way through the different layers, kind of like Dante's Inferno, the different layers of hell, and Rick and Morty both just arguing with each other, going, it's your fault, and having revelations. And it's a very funny but very sort of heartfelt sort of story, which again, Rick and Morty is, it's one of the things, it's very, people just see it as, oh, it's just stupid, it's silly, which in a way, yes, it is. But it's also, it is a very heartfelt story. If you sit and you watch it, you realize it is a lot deeper than, um, what is first shown. Um, I was going to say another one, but I've completely drawn a blank. Yeah, I mean that's about it really. I think I've gone on for about long enough now. But yeah, that's my adventure through graphic novels. It hasn't ended yet. It's not over. There are still tons of graphic novels that I want to go back and read. I've read a few of the Mass Effect ones, and I want to finish off those. I haven't read the first Contact War comic book series, so I want to go back and read those. Obviously they always bring out new comics. I've got to read the Doctor Who ones, go through them, and I've just got a lot of way to go. Luckily I'm still quite young, but I have so many books and so many video games and stuff I want to get out of the way. It's just hard trying to find the time, but I'm hoping that I can find the time somewhere or another to get around to finishing all these before I die. But as we all know, with anything where there's a lot of books, there's tons of video games. I do know that I won't play every game, I won't watch every movie, and I won't hear every song and read every book and all that. But I will try my best to do as much as possible. So I've got a lot to go, and there's a lot that I want to get through, and I'm sure that when I finish all the ones that I mentioned that I want to read, I will find more that I want to get round to and read, and probably hopefully be more Hulk stories. So yeah, I'll be a very busy boy, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who listened today, everybody who joined and listened to last week's ones. All the new followers, thank you for listening. Obviously, for if you're new, if you're old, don't forget to like, and I was going to like and subscribe, but you can't do that on Spotify. Don't forget to rate on Spotify. It's a little star rating, whatever you feel, out of 1 to 5, whatever you feel like I deserve. Give me a rating. It really, really helps with getting me up the line so more people can hear and more people can sort of check out the podcast. Also, if you're on Twitter, give me a follow. The Ginger Bookworm, follow me on there. You'll recognise me because I have the same profile picture as I do for the thumbnail here. If you're listening to Spotify, you can see the thumbnail, but just follow me on Twitter, the Ginger Bookworm. You'll find me. Also, there was one more thing that I wanted to say, and it's completely gone. Yeah, don't forget to share this with your friends, family, anybody you think who will enjoy it. Spread the word. More people that like and more people that retweet, and basically, the more people that hear this, it will help, and then hopefully from there I can start doing bigger and more things. And the more people I get to listen, and the more people that follow me on Twitter, I can ask questions and get feedback, and then I can ask you guys for topic ideas, because I don't just I love talking about the things I love, but I'd like to talk about the things that you love or you like, and then if I can get an idea of that sort of thing, then I can start making more plans and be more specific and more interesting things like that. Like I do plan, hopefully in the future, having guests on. One of the downsides of at the moment is that I've asked a lot of people, but majority of people that I've asked are all busy, either with work or university, studying. So they won't be free for another month or two, somewhere into the summer. So hopefully, as we get closer to the summer, I can start having some guests on. But for now, it's just going to be me. But I will say that if you have any ideas for topics or anything like that, just hit me up on Twitter. I'll happily sit and I'll listen to any topic or any idea that you have. I'd love to just break it down and find the best way I can talk about it and make it fun for you and for everybody else listening. Same with feedback. Any feedback you have at all, go and let me know, and I will try to incorporate that as much as possible. And yeah, that's about it really. So don't forget to, if you're listening on Spotify, to rate and share with your friends. Follow me on Twitter, the Ginger Bookworm, and I think that's everything really. So, as always, stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace, and thank you for listening to this episode of Nerdcast. Nerdcast? Yeah, changed my name again. Yeah, I'm not re-recording it. I'm gonna Try it again, because I'm 15 minutes in. I'm not going to re-record it. There. Try again. Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nerdstalgic with me, Luke the Ginger Bookworm. See, I got there eventually. Bye, guys.